today's topic, we are looking into how this Sindh has considerably large potential for renewable energy sources. So there are around 11 wind and 3 solar under construction projects, and the coastal areas have a greater potential for these energy generation, covering almost 1,120 kilometers for harnessing the potential. There is a recent World Bank study on variable renewable energy locational study that highlights that Sindh can generate a total of 6,765 megawatts of energy through solar and wind by 2025 and 10,030 by 2030. And on the wind power side, there's a annual wind speed of at the height of around 30 meters. That is around 7 meters per second, which further increases to around 9 at the height of 60 meters. So we see a lot of potential on harnessing these capacities, and the locational that locational study has identified to support and the upscaling of renewable energy in Pakistan. So to build upon this, and also to facilitate to remain on the track with our climate goals, also meeting the targets for Alternative Renewable Energy Policy 2019, it remains very critical to identify not only the prospects, but also the challenges, or to identify opportunities in terms of how to improve the existing grid network, transmission lines, and how would we ensure better large investment and timely investment coming in for a future economic and financial prospects of Pakistan. So with this, the main objectives is to have all our panelists speaking on these areas, especially highlighting their technical or theoretical potential in the coastal areas and their role in the Pakistan's capacity expansion plan. Also looking into the major limitations, technical challenges, and socio-economic impacts of the deployment and how we can overcome these challenges. We would also be very keen to hear from the investment side, especially under CPEC, on how we can explore more investments coming in clean energy, especially these variable renewable resources along the area, and how it could enable an accelerated development towards energy access and climate goals of Pakistan. With this, I think I would just like to request my colleague Ahad, if he could check if CEO Nepra has joined us. Yes, we could see so. So with this, I would just
Tasir Saab is here, ma'am.
Perfect. So with this, I would like to introduce our esteemed chief guest for today, Chairman NEPRA, Mr. Tausif Farooqi, having over 27 years of techno-commercial experience with specialization in managing the commercial and the business side of IPP projects. He had started his career with WAPTA in 1991 and has the distinguished honor of working on both technical and finance sides. Sir, the floor is yours for your opening remarks.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Dr. Hina, thank you very much. All my worthy audience, you are very gracious, you are very kind that you invite me almost on every webinar that you are arranging. Please stop that. I have just come from public hearings, but I promise to you that
Taseer Sahab, you're muted.
Sorry, I don't know. I touched the mouse by mistake. The topic of today's discussion is very interesting, actually. We have some challenges, we have some opportunities. I'm no expert in renewable energy or I'm not expert in anything basically, but I'm sort of managing the entire Pakistan's power industry actually, which includes thermal, hydro, renewable, and all the other sources. So I requested my personal staff officer to collect me some vital information that I can talk about in today's topic. So we all know that Pakistan is very blessed in a sense that our worst irradiance is probably better than the best in the Europe, and we have huge potential on the uh, RE side. And for your probably interest, about 5-6 months back, I also wrote to the Ministry of Power to also include hydro into renewable energy, because that's what is happening all over the world. So Prime Minister of Pakistan announced his target that he would like to add 20,000 megawatts, and he would like to take Pakistan's RE footprint from 3 to 30% over next 10 years. So when I met Prime Minister of Pakistan last year, I proposed to him that we can instantly jack up that number, and your target that you would like to achieve in next 10 years, I can help you in achieving that instantly with a stroke of a pen. And that is by adding renewable hydro into renewable energy. And we already have almost 30% generation mix on hydro. So if we add and 3% or maybe 3 or 4% on RE, so if we include hydro into RE, it will immediately become 34%. And if we go by the Prime Minister's target of next, to adding 20,000 megawatts on RE in the next 10 years, it will reach almost 60, 61, 62% actually. So Pakistan will be having one of the most presentable number on RE front, in the community of nations. So coming to today's topic, I believe when I checked with my staff, they did little research, and I've been told that there's already an established potential of almost 8 to 10,000 megawatts of wind as well as solar on the coastal areas of Pakistan. So this is something that we can tap. Unfortunately, the wind corridor in this area, Karachi and suburbs, is around 6.3 to 6.8 meters per second, the wind speed. Whereas in Chimpir or Garo, where we already have some assets, wind assets, we already have around 7.4 to 7.8 meters per second. This is the quality of air that we have. With regards solar, we have a very attractive irradiance number, which is 5 to 5.5, which is kilowatt per meter square per day, which is considered to be very interesting number, because we can surely make huge investments based on these numbers. We also have a huge potential for the biogas, a huge potential in a sense that that is, again, we are not probably talking on the commercial scale, but because one disadvantage that I would like to mention upfront is that if we are going to add our RE projects, especially based on lesser wind speed or lesser irradiance compared to other parts of Pakistan, that will add a little more cost, and the tariff will be a little expensive. And when the tariff will be a little expensive, it will probably be a little more difficult or comparative to sell it to the national grid. So we believe, based on the numbers that I've seen, that this market is probably more like a B2B or second tier market, I would say. You guys probably know that NAPRA has already come up with fantastic investor friendly wheeling regulations, whereby a very nominal amount around half a rupee or a 50 paisas you have to pay to the NTDC, and maybe depending on the disco and their losses, maybe around 1.5 rupees to a disco, and you can do wheeling from one corner to another corner of Pakistan at your mutually agreed rate. So being a NAPRA chairman, the target that I've set for myself, I would like to deregulate this market as much as possible. So this is a classic example whereby we, based on the leadership that we got from the Prime Minister, who really would like to do a lot for the industry of Pakistan, we have come up with one of the most fantastic, most investor-friendly wheeling regulations. So I personally believe, based on the numbers that I have seen, that this is a perfect market for wheeling and B2B. Then we also have the potential for biogas. Biogas, again, based on a very rough estimate, this is cow dung based generation. So we have a potential of about 25 megawatts instantly that we can start with. Then we also have waste to energy potential. We probably know that each Pakistani is almost producing 0.613 tons of waste per year. So this is again an attractive number, in a sense that we have a potential of putting up 50 megawatts instantly, a plant. And I have already been in touch with a couple of investors who approached me, and they were quite keen, but I didn't see much progress there. So all these different, let's say, production facilities that we are talking about, or different technologies through which we can generate electricity. NAPRA has already got all the regulations. So if anybody approaches NAPRA, we are almost there. We don't need to make any preparations. Definitely, case to case basis, we have to go into the nitty-gritties of the case. But the baseline regulations are available for all this. The next potential is tidal wave. Unfortunately, no potential has yet been calculated for this, but we all know that we have the waves, and we have the tidal potential, and we have more than 900 kilometers of coastal line, so we can capitalize on this. But one has to put probably a little more effort. So I personally believe this is an area where investors should really show their interest and come up with their own studies. And the last being geothermal. We have certain areas, like Mango Pir area, where ground temperature is around 55 degrees. And there is a reason to believe that we have a huge potential of geothermal as well. So these are the few areas where which are ready for energy transition in Pakistan, to move on from conventional production technologies like hydro, like thermal. So we have to get out of it, especially thermal, because we can't afford to go on the imported fuel based projects. And secondly, we don't have enough local gas to basically meet our demand. So we have to go for cheaper, neater, cleaner solutions. And these are these energy transition options that we have. So let me just very quickly recap the challenges that we face on these areas. I think the availability of land, that could be an issue. Then in few areas, site access could be limited. So these are the areas that the investors have to keep in mind. Then because especially near Karachi, environmental issues could be substantial. So again, that is something to be the areas to ponder. And the last being that we have some strategic sites of Pakistan in these areas now. The nuclear is coming and all that. So we have to, whether it is military or civilian, let's say, sites which are strategic in nature, the investor has to keep them in mind. The opportunities are that, as I already said, it's a huge potential for B2B comparative bidding based, and capitalizing on the NEPRA has already given regulations. there's a huge potential out there on private sale of electricity, and which can be used in the street lights, in the commercial buildings, even in the small industry, in SMEs. And there are also many naval facilities there. So these can be capitalized, and these can be, benefited from. One area which is very close to my heart is that more than 30% Pakistanis are still without electricity, and I would like to focus, being chairman NAPRA, to provide electricity to as many of those 30% as possible. And through this energy transition, we have a huge potential of distributed energy, and then microgrids, and so we can, for the last 73 years since we had our beloved Pakistan, we unfortunately couldn't provide electricity to these 30% people, mostly in the region where there is a very dispersed population. Let's say in Balochistan, you will go, and after many kilometers, you will see 10 houses, 12 houses, 100 houses, 1,000 houses. So it was not thought to be commercially viable to take sort of transmission lines there. But now with the advent of RE and microgrids and distributed energy, we are very lucky. Now we have the potential. So I would encourage all the investors that this is something that I'm already working on. We are already coming up with our microgrid framework, and we are working with, you guys might know Mr. Ahmed Durrani. We have already tied up our hands with them. He's sort of working as our consultant, and we are, and I also engaged LUMS in that. So we are trying to sort of come up with some solution for these 30% Pakistanis. And I would request all the investors that do think about it. It's not only going to be a profitable business, but it's also going to be a charity, in a sense that you are trying to fulfill and giving a equal playing field to those who are also Pakistanis, but unfortunately we couldn't service them in the last 73 years. So with this, I close my introductory talk, and thank you very much once again, the team, for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tausif Saab, and I thank you for such excellent remarks and setting the baseline, I think, for the next panel discussion we are going to take, and that is the reason that we are always encouraged to have you on board, that you have provided such a holistic and comprehensive overview of the discussion that is going to be held today. So thank you so much for your valuable time and your excellent remarks to begin with. And we look forward to have your continuous support in this regard. So thank you so much.
Moving on. See you next month then. Cheers. Bye-bye. See you. Bye-bye.
Bye. So thank you to our esteemed guests who just joined us for the remarks. And moving on, I would request my team to kind of provide this, to play the documentary that we have produced for this clean energy transition in Pakistan to begin with, and then I'll move on to the panel discussion afterwards.
The energy sector of Pakistan is marked with major inefficiencies, financial risks, and misaligned policies. Hence, there is a need to identify the critical factors and how our current policies and international agreements can shape up the future energy and environmental outlook of the country.
Pakistan remains one of the top most vulnerable country of climate change impacts.
We need to see COVID-19 as an opportunity to bring back the SDGs on track in a timely, efficient manner. We are constrained on resources, and climate-related SDGs are, of course, certainly off track. But this is the time to rethink our production processes and really build systems and processes so that we don't go back to business as usual.
Despite nationally determined contribution objectives, climate concerns, and risk of long-term financial locking due to thermal energy resources, the coal capacity of Pakistan has significantly increased over the years. This will most certainly put the country off track to meet its climate goals.
Green CPEC should be seen as an initiative where countries such as Pakistan can get to see a lot of knowledge and technology transfer. And of course, when this is embedded in current knowledge systems, it goes a long way in not just helping the public sector, but also the private sector to develop a shared understanding around green and clean energy over the longer term.
Pakistan has ample physical resource potential of wind and solar. Only a fraction of total power is being generated from renewables. Most important for green CPEC, the share of fossil fuel financing has been decreasing, while the amount invested in renewable energies, particularly hydropower, has been increasing.
Considering these potential impacts, greening CPEC seems to be a good way of mobilizing finances by focusing on accelerating investments in green and innovative infrastructure, also in renewable energy, transport, nature-based solutions, agriculture, trade, and so on.
It will be timely to see that the fiscal policy or our investment-oriented promotion schemes which we have for the energy sector, they should be certain for our investors in the energy sector so that private enterprise or even those involved in public-private partnerships get to have a certain policy environment in this sector. And of course, investments in green and clean energy require longer-term certainty of policies, which can only come around if fiscal policy does not see frequent changes.
Diversification of financial resources, along with awareness and capacity building in financial institutions, can ensure the availability of green finance and green stimulus. If this is to become a broader trend for Chinese overseas investments, we would need clear and stringent policy guidelines from both China and Pakistan. It would pave the way for clean energy transition in Pakistan.
Great. Thank you to the team for presenting the documentary that we have that actually covers a whole background of the project on clean energy transition we are doing in Pakistan. So in the interest of time, I would not like to have more elaboration on that and just go on to the next session that is on the prospects, challenges, limitations, and the socio-economic impacts of renewable energy deployment along the coastal lines of Karachi. Before I just begin before I invite our the panelists, I would just like to go through some of the housekeeping rules that is just a decorum of this webinar, in terms of if I could request all the panelists to kindly keep their microphone off while they're not speaking, just to ensure good quality audio for everyone. We would encourage the panelists who would be speaking to, if their bandwidth allows, to kindly switch off their cameras to have better interaction. This seminar is being recorded and the video will be posted online. It is also Facebook Live. We would also like welcome you to revisit the discussion We would also be very pleased if you could share it with your stakeholders. Also, we'll be presenting and sharing a report afterwards on the discussion that we'll be holding today. We will invite questions from the audience when the time comes, and they are free to write in the Q&A box and also the chat box for the panelists who have joined us. So, and I shall be facilitating the two sessions today as a moderator itself. So it's for the first session on the prospects, challenges, limitations. We have invited we have invited Dr. Irfan Mirza. He's a CEO, Resources Limited, Vice President, World Wind Energy Association, Pakistan, for his remarks to begin with, and also to shed light on the prospects and the challenges that he feels to be undertaken or to be considered in support of energy, renewable energy upscaling and transition in Pakistan. So over to you, Dr. Irfan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Dr. Hina. Thank you, team. Please let me know if the voice quality is okay. Otherwise, I'll switch off the video as well. So, this is a very, very important topic, and I think it is good to hear the views of Chairman NEPRA on the subject, because it is always good to hear from the horse's mouth that how the government is thinking, what the government's plans are. But obviously, planning and execution are obviously two different things. So let me come to the topic directly. You know, just to put the records straight, right now we have almost 186 megawatts, 1,186 megawatts operational in wind energy, and hopefully 610 megawatts are going to be operational by end of this year. So this is just as a wind energy, but the biggest challenge, I'll start right now, and hopefully the other speakers are going to tell this also. Based on the IGCEP, this is our indicative generation capacity expansion plan, which is basically governing the whole development of power sector in Pakistan. We have put in targets for the renewable energy in Pakistan, and based on these targets, the biggest challenge we are facing is a low demand. So I am trying to focus, and I appreciate Chairman NEPRA as well, that he focused on that as well. That is, other than the non-grid electricity, like business to business ventures, he's saying. So similarly, we have a lot of options. We have to think out of the box. Actually, if we see in the last, when we have started working in our lifetime, we are at a transition of this digital age versus a diary age. So I still write on diary, but unfortunately my kids, they just look at me like, oh, what you are doing, because they have now all the gadgets available and they are working on these gadgets. So this was kind of a paradigm shift for us. And now, unfortunately, when we are preparing these IGCEPs and plans, we somehow are looking at the recent technologies and try to predict what is going to happen in future. This is unfortunately totally opposite what is happening in the world, and in the developed countries, when they are planning, they see how the technologies are going to change in future. You can see that we don't have any kind of a department, even the private sector and the people, that how we are going to see that what is going to be the change in the next 5 years in the technology, next 10 years in the technology, next 20 years in the technology, but we are making a plan, for example, from 2018 to 2040, without going into the details that what is going to happen. So based on the technologies right now, we are trying to predict the future, which is unfortunately a recipe for the failure. This is basically very important, that we have to see that what is happening in the last 5 years, where the world is going, and now what are going to be the changes in the technology. So having said this, I don't want to confuse people much into it, but we somehow need to see out of the box. For example, so rather than going into the details and the issues, I just trying to give you some, for example, some ideas which I think can be out of the box. For example, because I think there are a lot of other panelists, worthy panelists, who are going to speak about, what are the issues while you are going to. So rather than talking about the issues, let me give you a few ideas. For example, I was thinking that what if there is no demand for electricity or less demand of electricity, and how we are going to put renewable energy. One way is to deplete the thermal energy and bring this renewable. But there are other technical challenges in that, because wind is, for example, focusing in one side, like the south of Pakistan. And for example, if we start, putting up more and more, then there are going to be the stability issues. So which technical people are definitely thinking. So this is not the right forum to go into the details. But for example, I'm just thinking, what is going to be the biggest challenge we have in future for Karachi? So I see that the biggest challenge is the drinking water for Karachi right now. Portable water. Even right now, this is a challenge. What is the biggest issue? How we are going to produce water? How UAE is green? How Saudi Arabia is green? All because of desalination water. So why can't we? And we have a coastline like Dr. Hina mentioned, like Tausif Saab mentioned, that we have hundreds and hundreds of kilometers of coastal line available with us. So what if we start putting wind turbines and trying to couple it with the desalination units? So rather than making electricity, or rather than taking the electricity to the grid, we are going to make water from that electricity, and then start supplying that water to Karachi and other areas. So this is one idea, I believe, which definitely, because put us in a position where we are going to use renewable energy, and at the same time we are going to kill one of our biggest problem, that is. Then there are other technologies as well on the coastal areas of Karachi, which where people can work. For example, one such technology is, for example, producing hydrogen. Because hydrogen, we see, if we look into the future, hydrogen is the fuel of the future. So how we are going to produce hydrogen and start using hydrogen as a fuel in the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, is basically we can use, because we all know that we need electricity for this kind of electrolysis. So for electricity, we can use wind turbines, we can use solar technologies around the coastline. So we can even, and then the new technologies like wave and tidal have already been mentioned. This is all over in the world, but I can at least, for example, just to highlight and touch that how we think and how we make policies with a myopic vision. Myopic vision, for example, if you all remember that if we have I don't know आजकल के ज़माने में है कि नहीं, हमारे ज़माने में there were tangas, ghodas and tangas. So normally the coachman, the rider of the coach with the horse, he put some kind of I'm sorry, I don't need the translation if somebody has, but they put a khopa, we call it in Punjabi, the khopas on the eyes of the horse, so that horse can only focus straight. He should not look around. So he should only see the road and run. So this is for the rider, but unfortunately now these khopas have been I should not use any remarks which hurt. So, but But our coachwans are now these days wearing the khopas. So coachwans have to look around, coachwan have to see what is happening, and he has to, but instead of the horse, the coachwan is wearing the khopa. For example, I just highlight, I don't want to go into the details, but for example, in policy, it is written, this latest policy is a very good policy, but somehow I don't know why we don't trust our own departments. Section 2.2.3, unsolicited projects. We just add one line, just one small line. I don't know people notices or not, but one small line and we kill all the initiatives. And that one small line is that all the new tech, we encourage, for example, in this, we encourage new technologies. We ask the new technologies. We say that all the new technologies we can give unsolicited tariff. You don't need to go to the competitive.
I'm sorry to interrupt. It's just been 10 minutes. I would just appreciate if you could wind up your, summarize your points in 1 to 2 minutes, and I can move on to the next panelist.
Dr. Hina, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. That is why I don't come to the seminars these days. I'm really sorry. You just give me 1 minute, I'll summarize. Just one line that is written, that cost plus tariff is allowed to the new technology, but the tariff is below the basket price. You know, you created NEPRA, you created all this. Why the policy makers at one AC room want to see that new technology should be below the, it means if in the horizon, all the new technologies are going to come, and if they are slightly above the basket price, we are going to reject them. Whether we are going to use them in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years, we are not going to experiment. We are not going to go into the detail, because our policy is saying that if the price is not below the basket price, we will not encourage that. Thank you very much. We don't need that. So anyway, so my point is, just to finish within 30 seconds, is that we definitely need to see out of the box. We need to see, you know, explore new technologies, but at the same time, we need to, you know, somehow make policies in such a way that would encourage technologies which are going to come in future. We should have the ability, while making the policies, to look into the future, that what is going to happen in future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Irfan. And I think the key is that in all these strategic plans, the strategic plans for sustainable development, new enabling technologies related to renewables, related to the clean energy remains critical. And thanks for highlighting the impediments and suggestions for the government, and also to highlight some of the socioeconomic impacts, that is the need for Karachi, that is related to water issues. So thank you so much. Moving on, I would just like to quickly give a floor to Dr. Muhammad Farooq. He's a head of energy, environment and sustainability research at UET Lahore, having more than 12 years of research, industrial and teaching experience around the globe, UK, USA, China, Italy, Turkey, Germany. The mic is yours, Dr. Farooq. Sir, we cannot hear you very clearly. If you could kindly. If the IT can probably check from.
So can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Sorry, I don't know now because of this digital world. Thank you very much, everyone, for this kind and great invitation and this very useful and informative session. I have listened all the discussion regarding this from Dr. Irfan, and I have quite overlapped and parallel views as well. But I would like to focus mainly, within these 5 minutes, that from the academia or research perspective, that how we can reshape, or you can say we can liaison with the industry, which we have seen. Like I belong from the academia side for the last 12 years. And I have been participating in different kind of seminars, webinars, and conferences and industrial exhibitions as well. So my point of view will be regarding with respect to the education sector, or how our higher education or you can say the industrial stakeholders can liaison with the academia. So the main concern from my side is that first of all, what we need to think about, that in any developed region, if we see, like as Dr. Hina mentioned, I have been experienced in different part of the world. So basically, we always have some sort of problem somewhere, and then there is academia and research side. Unfortunately, in Pakistan, what we have seen that we are not licensed properly. We need to basically linked up our all stakeholders, like for example from the academia side, from the industry side, from the public organization, and I think the SDPI is playing a very good role in that. And I think these recommendations should be emphasized for the government as well, that for example, when our higher education commission announce any projects for the academia or for the research, we are doing some sort of projects, but we are just taking as a formal, you can say as a formality, the industrial stakeholder. And when industry is doing something, the same thing is happening over here. So this is the main point which I would like to highlight first. Coming to the point regarding the renewable energy situation in Pakistan, well, we all know that currently and for the last decades, we are mainly relying on the fossil fuel, and which are not even environmental friendly. And the energy demand on the other side is increasing every year around 10% annually in Pakistan. Well, mainly majorly because of the population growth rate and other things as well. So keeping in mind the renewable energy sector resources, it can be of, you can say, a main think tank for the Pakistan. So the point is that when we are making any policies regarding the renewable energy or the energy transmission, as number of examples have been given by the Chairman NAPRA. So why we don't consider the things that, for example, the resources of the renewable energy we have in Pakistan, and accordingly we can think about that which can be cost effective, energy efficient, and environmentally sustainable. So as Dr. Irfan mentioned in his speech, that we should consider that the prices, for example, should be the main criteria. Well, because whenever we have any kind of prices, ultimately it will be a kind of you can say come on the pockets of the user. So we need to be very much focused regarding this thing, that the government should make policies in the interest of the you can say the poor line of the Pakistan actually. So in the past we have seen the contracts of IPPs, and so many, you may have so many examples that have created a lot of loss for Pakistan, and we cannot finish those contracts until those get ends. So in this scenario, well, when we have the energy demand, and you will see that well, according to a report, it will be eightfolded increase in 2030 and 20-fold increase in 2050. So with this so huge demand of the energy, we in Pakistan have a lot of, you can say, the potential of different renewable resources. For example, the biomass has in Pakistan we have fourth or fifth in the world who are producing so much biomass. But on the contrary, when we'll see that how much is being the utilization of the biomass energy and how much we are producing biomass energy is very negligible. Similarly, on the other side, when we see the solar is we have huge potential. We have, I think, around 10 months in a year we have so much solar, but still we are facing the issues of the load shedding or something like that. So being an you can say a small opinion holder, I would just suggest that we need to focus basically, we need to uh, take in consideration all the stakeholders while making some policies, rather than just some political decisions. Or you can say you will see that maybe it will be something hurtful some people, but when we are making some decision, there are people who are bureaucrats, or you can say some other people who are non-relevant. Being an you can say an energy expert in well, in not a big capacity, I would suggest that whenever we make policies, that should be at least proofread or should be sent for feedback to some well, industrial stakeholders or to some academia stakeholders. But the policies are being made by some bureaucrats or some parliamentarians who may have some different objectives actually. And you will see that these things, if keep continuing, these will ultimately will not in the favor of the country. So with having so much huge potential in the Pakistan related to the renewable energy resources, and if we talk about our different like our different regions in the Pakistan, we have so much potential that should be uh, taken into consideration in the favor of the and in the best interest of the country. So otherwise you will see that the energy demand is keep on increasing, and on other side we are just considering that temporary solutions, and these temporary solutions are moving on, and these will not be sustainable. So ultimately some bottleneck point will come ahead, and someone has to take in, and then they have to make some you can say the useful decisions. In within these 5 minutes maybe I might not be, it might not be possible for me to give more insight regarding all these things, but the general idea is that we should focus and we should take in consideration like a chain to keep in consideration all the stakeholders from the academia side and from the industry side, from the public side, from the private sector. So this is very much important, and this is the conclusion from my side as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Farooq. And I think rightly said that we need to have a strong coordination to overcome the gaps, the capacity issues that you have just identified as well in making these plans, and to identify the technical capabilities and upscaling of our renewable energy projects in Pakistan. Moving on, we have a representative, Mr. Arsalan Ahmed from Power China. Power China is the largest EPC in Pakistan, in the world, and also have major investments coming in under CPEC as well. He's an experienced energy.
Hello everyone, this is Arsalan from Power China.
Yeah, so over to you, Arsalan.
Hello, can you people hear me?
Yes,
Can you people hear me?
yes, now we can hear you. If I just request you to just be closer to the microphone.
Hello, can you people hear me?
Yes, we can. Arsalan, can you hear us?
Ma'am, he is disconnected.
Can you people hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Hello?
जी असलान साहब आपकी आवाज आ रही है, प्लीज कंटिन्यू करें.
Okay, so this is Arsalan from Power China. I want to thank you first, Dr. Hena and SDPI platform to share our views regarding this sustainable development in Pakistan. So speaking about this, I believe that Pakistan has started to move in the right direction. I slightly disagree with the Chairman NEPRA policies because of the cost plus tariff as highlighted by Dr. Irfan. But my view on this is that Pakistan is still on the right direction. We are not like in the 2010, we were not developing and not working in the renewable energy sector at that large. But right now, I want to assure that attendees
I think there's a connectivity issue from Arsalan. Probably he's in the field and we could not hear him. Arsalan, are you with us? Meanwhile, if the Umair from the IT team, if you could connect with him, we can just, I think, move on to the next session and then we can invite him later.
Sure, ma'am.
So thank you so much for the experts to shed light on the prospects, challenges in the next session. Moving on, we have the next session on identifying the key steps that we think should be implemented in the country to upscale the renewable energy technologies and investments. And we have invited the right set of experts to discuss on the way forward and the steps that should be taken. Firstly, I would request.
Hello, Dr. Hina. Can you people hear me?
Arsalan, we can hear you. We have started with our next session. Would it be okay if we could connect to you after that in the session after Mr. Said? Yeah. So firstly, I would like to invite Mr. Said Ahmed. If he's, yeah.
I am here.
He's the Additional Secretary, Energy Department, Government of Sindh.
I am now retired.
Oh, you're retired.
Yes, of course.
Welcome, sir. Thank you anyways.
Ma'am, I have to speak or you will put questions first. I am not hearing your voice, please.
Yeah, sorry. So in this session, we are focusing on, like in the first session, we focused on the prospects challenges. In this section, we are particularly looking into identifying the steps that needed to be taken by the government and by the relevant stakeholders and by the investors to upscale the renewable energy technologies along the coastlines of Karachi. So that is the topic for session 2.
Okay, ma'am. First of all, I will ask that you have shown 1100 kilometers line for Karachi. That is not for Karachi, but that is for entire city, coastal belt. And moreover, the wind and solar potential you have identified, those are also for entire city. That is 6,000 plus megawatt up to 2025, and then up to 2030, those are 10,000 plus. These are not for Karachi, but entire city. Just explain this, and then I will proceed further.
Sure, thank you. So would you like to have some further comments at the moment? Or?
Yes, ma'am. I will ask, first of all, the policies are to be relaxed, such as NEPRA's policies. For instance, in remote areas, if someone is going to install a independent power project, that is standalone power project, that should be relaxed from all bindings. Only they should install, get checked from electric inspector, and forward their data to NEPRA for their report. If these are placed on them, then what will happen? That they will not install it, the electricity will not go to rural areas where the people have to be given electricity, all rural people by 2030. First of all, these policies need to be relaxed. Second is that you have to identify places where wind projects are to be installed, not only at Dhampir or one place, but scattered on many places with identification, so that imbalancing is not there on or transmission lines. Similarly, tariff, tariff should be opened, not restricted. If one is giving at some say one tariff, then that should be continued in those things which are given standalone projects. However, for national grid, tariff has to be determined. These are few points, and I can also add more while discussions are on. Thank you.
Thank you, Said Saab. I think in the beginning about the potential of the solar and the wind, I think we explicitly mentioned about the whole sense. So probably it was just a miscommunication from our side, but it was, as mentioned, the concept note as well. The figures were given for the whole synth, and we are just highlighting some of the related issues just along Karachi, but not specifically confined to it. Moving on, I would like to give a floor to our next panelist, Mustafa Sayed Haider. He's the Executive Director, Pakistan-China Institute. And I would like to request him to give his remarks on the prospects of this green transition under CPEC, what financing mechanisms, business models, strategies and policies would support this renewable energy, clean energy transition under CPEC. Since you are working very closely with Chinese stakeholders and partners, what do you think there are mutual aspirations for both Chinese and Pakistan government? What could you think that the major steps and the key impediments that needs to be overcome? So over to you.
Thank you, Hina. Firstly, my compliments to you for recovering. You were unwell and you've bounced back with clean and green energy. So good to see that. And I also want to compliment the SDPI and particularly Hina for their consistent effort in promoting the green transition and making Pakistan's government and the civil society more aware of how important it is to be more conscientious of this very important thing which is happening. I think this is a very important topic when you talk about the China-Pakistan economic corridor, because as we know that the majority of the investment, particularly in energy that we are receiving from outside, is from China. And in the past 5 years or 6 years, there has been an influx of investment from China. And it has been in a varied realms of energy, which include renewable, solar, wind, hydro, coal, thermal, nuclear. And as we move forward, and I think as Dr. Waqar in the documentary rightly said, that COVID-19 provides an opportune moment, a silver lining, if you will, that this is a good time to pause and reflect and to have what I call the green reset. Since Pakistan is the 7th most affected country by climate change, and it only contributes to the carbon footprint by 0.8%, this disproportional adverse being an affectee from climate change is something that needs to be articulated internationally. So we are assisted by the International Committee of Nations and donors, as well as we become more self-reliant in how we articulate our own plight when it comes to climate change. How can we do that, and how can we make CPEC more green? Firstly, I think the most important thing is to understand that we cannot have more investment in power before we upgrade our national grid system. I think that clarity as we move forward is very important, because the issue, Hina, as you know, is that we have a serious obstacle of power evacuation. We have received a lot of energy investments. It has by and large bridged the gap between demand and installed capacity and line losses. But the grid is old and archaic, and we are unable to sufficiently carry out power evacuation. And a lot of our distribution companies in different provinces are also outdated. The governance is outdated. The infrastructure is outdated. So our grid has not been at par with the latest investments that we've received. And for renewable investments, renewable energy investments to take place, a prerequisite is an integrated grid. So when we move forward, first actionable item that the SDPI and Pakistan China Institute, and of course we are working on certain issues related to China together for the future as well, that we need to articulate is that the next pit stop for the joint working group, which is under the Joint Coordination Committee of Pakistan and China, should have the grid as a priority. And it has to be a broad prism when we talk about grid. For example, we have a Lahore to Matiari grid project, which is a good step in the right direction, but it's small, carried out by the state grid, which is the equivalent to the NTDC of Pakistan. So that project is good, but it has to be an overarching project. We have a project in Karachi, Port Qasim, 1320 megawatt, Sahiwal, in Thar. Do we have the grid system for that right now? No, we don't. So for future renewable energy, before we get into renewable energy investment discourse, grid, integrated grid, and we need to include that in CPEC. Secondly, when we talk about renewable energy investments, we have to give incentives. And Tasif Farooqi Saab determines the tariff. And we have to understand that when we talk about renewable investments, it is not based on corporate social responsibility. Investments in a country, whether CPEC or outside, are based on market forces. Unless and until we incentivize investments in renewable energy, there will be no investments in renewable energy. When we received the investments in CPEC in the renewable sector in Thatta and Jimpir, which I visited, there's Power China, China 3 Gorges, Engro, Fauji Foundation have also invested there. The tariff was much higher and it was much more attractive. But after that, the tariff has come to a much lower level. And that is also one of the reasons, is because the cost of the equipment, of the machinery, of the renewable energy projects has come down. But we have to offer green bonds, green guarantees, special sovereign guarantees, not the regular sovereign guarantees, special sovereign guarantees to investors, so they are preferring renewable. If they have the option of traditional fossil fuel investments and renewable investments, they should choose renewable investments based on market forces. That is not happening right now. That is very, very important. And that has to be done with the dialogue of NEPRA, because they are an autonomous body which determine the tariff, the power ministry, and the investors. The investors have to be very much part of this dialogue. So all parties know what are the expectations of the investors, what are the expectations of NEPRA, and where can they meet? Can they meet halfway somewhere or no? And how to meet that halfway? So this trilateral dialogue, and we can talk more about this later, is very, very important to move forward. Because the noise that we are making, the noise that this webinar is making, has to make it to the ears of the investors who have the money, because otherwise this will just be theoretical. We have to make sure that when it is applied, the people who are investing understand this and implement it like that. So this green bonds, green guarantees, and lenders have to be very much part of this conversation, because lenders are used to, whether it's the international banks like AIIB or China Exim or Pakistani banks or companies, they're used to, unfortunately, we all are more familiar with fossil fuel projects. So the steps of executing and implementing those projects, including banks, which provide key debt financing, are more familiar with those fossil fuel projects. And some consider renewable energy projects more riskier. The other thing is that there is evidence-backed data, which is not projected enough, that shows that renewable energy investments create more jobs and are better for the economy, data-wise, than fossil fuel projects. Now, people don't know this. So it's very important to have a communication campaign. Apart from renewable energy being good for the environment and good for the world and being a good moral decision, it is actually a marketable thing. It's actually from a political perspective, because governments have to look at how many jobs they are creating. There are other considerations when policymakers and ministers look at decisions. There is evidence to suggest that renewable energy investments are creating more jobs than fossil fuel projects. So this data, this empirical research needs to be disseminated. So communication is a very important part. And the other important thing that I think we need to really work on is making a green CPEC, a green transition, part of a working group, or make a new working group, a joint working group, because as you know, or most of us know, a lot of people probably don't know, that the Joint Coordination Committee, which is the overarching body of the decision-making consultative body between the National Development Reform Commission of China and the Ministry of Planning and Development and Reform, has joint working groups. So there's a joint working group on infrastructure, on water, on energy, on infrastructure. I think, and I would propose, there should be a joint working group on greening CPEC. And how would that work? Because we see, and it was a privilege to be part of the Belt and Road Forum, which is the apex body of Belt and Road decision-making, hosted by Xi Jinping and Angela Merkel and Christine Lagarde, all the heads of the financial institutions, all the key heads of states of the world who are part of BRI were there. The policy and political commitment from China is there, and the name of that BRI forum held 2 years ago was Green and High Quality BRI. So that political commitment is there. Political commitment is there from the government of Pakistan. The question is, how do we bridge that gap between the top level political commitment and implementation on the ground? And I think that is where organizations like the Pakistan China Institute, SDPI, and companies comes in to advocate, to make aware and to inculcate that bridge is shrunk. My other point I would like to make is that in the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, there's a very important aspect of the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA. And the EPA is an organization which does the due diligence for clearing and giving the NOC and the endorsement of a project. I think that the capacity building of the Environmental Protection Agency needs to take place. It does not have enough teeth. It does not have enough autonomy. And I think that is a critical institutional capacity deficit that we really need to address. And that's a big elephant in the room, because any project that happens has to have their endorsement, but they buckle under political pressure. They don't have the capacity. And they are used, unfortunately, and I'm going to be straightforward, they're used as a rubber stamp. Once the project is all ready and about to be implemented, the stamp, it goes to them for the signature. It has to be a bottom-up approach. It has to go to them first. and it has to be made more autonomous, the Environmental Protection Agency, and they have to be more trained. They have to be made more aware. They have to be made more, familiar with what's happening in green transition, in the green reset, and their role in this whole equation is very, very important. So I think that Environmental Protection Agency, which was last headed by Farzana Shah, I believe, needs to be also factored in. So these are my, I didn't want to exceed the time, but I just wanted to be clear and precise. And I look forward to questions and ideas and input. And again, I thank Hina and her team and SDPI for hosting this very important, timely session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mustafa. And I think very important points that you highlighted, especially to begin with about the infrastructure, the challenges we have with the transmission distribution grid system. That is an area that warrants like more attention, of course. Also for highlighting the role of investors and sensitizing them and informing them about the new analysis that not only at the global level has been identified that the renewables are the cheapest form of energy, and the capacity is set to rise, and how to enhance the role of financial institutions to incentivize their strategies and their mechanisms in this regard remains really, really critical. And that is actually the main purpose of bringing you all together here to shed light on these perspectives so that we can connect these dots. And especially the last point that you highlighted about the role of EPAs, I think is very, very rightly said. As a part of this, this clean energy transition project we are doing, we had conducted a focus group discussion with the provincial EPAs in this regard. So the report and the video is also available on the project page, in which we identified and we sensitized them about the critical role that they need to be ensuring about the environmental issues, impact assessments, the compliance, and also covering the aspects that are all the key components in terms of when we are talking about switching to green or the green development and reaching, meeting the sustainable development goals for the country. So thank you so much for highlighting these really important points. Moving on and coming to the point that you mentioned about the investor side, we have Mr. Tanveer Mirza with us. He's a director operations from United Energy Private Limited. And we would be really delighted to hear his perspective. Mr. Tanveer, over to you. Tanveer Mirza Saab, are you with us? If you are muted, kindly unmute yourself. I think he's having the network issues again. I would just like to, since we were listening from Arsalan from Power China.
Hello?
Yes.
Sorry, Dr. Hina, are you able to hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Perfect.
Okay, fine. Dr. Hina, first of all, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And I would also like to thank the SDPI in terms of whatever their contribution is in this awareness programs over a long time now. With reference to sustainable renewable development of Pakistan. I think this is a very right forum in order to open the ears and eyes for various stakeholders in terms of assessing and evaluation of the renewable resources in Pakistan. Secondly is coming back to the subject. What I really think is that as you have just mentioned that it is Sindh coast, but not the Karachi coast, because when I checked in first of all, that what exactly is the length of the Karachi coast, then I found it out that is just 100-kilometer length of a belt. So including from Gharo to Korangi area, actually, the thing is that now, what I would like to add is that first of all, in this area, we really, all of us agree that there are the potential of renewable energy is there, whether it is in terms of wind, it is in terms of solar or other renewable resources. But the impact is that what in terms of the investor point of view, we have to do it. Let's, for example, if we are talking about the Karachi belt, if it is Gharo, then Gharo is already included in the wind corridor, which is already established. So there is a potential, and the wind power projects and the solar projects are there. But apart from this wind corridor of Gharo, if we are moving towards the other side of the coastal areas, so do we have really the infrastructure development? First of all, I would like to know that what are the development plans on this coastal belt from the government of Sindh? So do we have the place to execute or to implement or to install the renewable projects over there? Let's, for example, if we wanted to install minimum 50 megawatt of wind power, it requires almost around 1,000 acres of land. So do we need one project, or we need a multiple of the other areas? So do we the land available with reference to install the turbines and all the other? Do we have to land available where we can so we have to look into this. Secondly is that if, let's for example, the wind, we wanted to add wind not on the onshore but the offshore. So do we have the capacity? Okay, because there are 2 to 3 main things, technical, commercial, legal. We have the from technical capacity. Let's for example, if you have the potential to pile in, how to install the, how to evaluate the to submerge. So all these things have to evaluate. We have this part of the coastal line has more wind, and this part is having this thing. So these studies, infrastructure development, all these things are there. So we need to have really a pro out of lot of coordination between the federal. So developing a project.
Sir, I think your voice is really disrupted and we are not being able to understand the last couple of points. Are you with us? I think again, there is a network and connectivity issue, and we also, yes, Tanveer Saab.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, there is some network issues in
also
in this area since last day. I don't know why. Hello?
Yeah, that's okay. We can hear you. If you could summarize your perspective in around.
Okay. Yes, just wanted to summarize. Just wanted to summarize only on this. So now the biggest issue is that we want to either install the new projects to increase the power, or we really want to streamline the evacuation. I have the NEPRA studies, NTDC studies with me at the moment, where it is clearly mentioned that our production capacity or the installed capacity for power is around 32,000 megawatt, the consumption is around 18 to 20,000 megawatt, a gap of almost 10 to 12,000 megawatts per year. And also the peak demand and the low demand. When it is a low demand, it is hardly 7,000 megawatt. So which means the evacuation of the power is not there. So in this scenario, do we really want to more power project, or we want to streamline the evacuation or the network where we want to approach each and every single individual of Pakistan? So this is to be streamlined. So this is how I believe that focus on renewable resources, that first of all, how we are going to implement the project. Let's, for example, we have made the precedent that, okay, if we have to put the wind power projects, then this wind corridor is to be internationally certified, or there, blah, 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 and a lot of other things. So if we are going to install a new project, are the framework available or not? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. And despite having a low connectivity, I think great insights and duly noted the challenges that you have mentioned. I would just like to, before I see the hand raised by Mr. Said Ahmed, but we have our last panelist with us who have just joined us a bit late, but Mr. Jahanzeb from Annual Energy Development Board. He's a Director of Corporate Finance. We would be listening from his perspective on the topic of discussion we have right now. So Jahanzeb, can you hear us? Jahanzeb Saab, if you're listening, if you could kindly.
Yes, ma'am. I missed 2 points to say. One was that in concept paper, you have combined wind and solar together, and that also for coastal belt. Whereas you see that coastal belt is always cloudy in summer, and solar is poor in this region. My suggestion is that solar and wind must be separated, and the solar may be taken to upper Sindh, that is, say, to Gudu, where grid system is already available, to Jamshoro, where grid station is already there, but not in coastal belt, because due to cloud season from 15th June to 15th September, the output will be very low. Secondly, I would say that my friend has suggested desalination plant for Karachi to give drinking water to all. I suggest that salination plant also be, many salination plants may also be installed in coastal belt, so that that is made all green and pollution free. These are my two suggestions, if you consider it. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And I think it's been unfortunate to not to be able to hear from Jahanzeb and Arsalan due to the connectivity issue. I hope we can have their perspective coming in our last launch that we are hoping to do in this month within June. With this, since the time is just ticking, and we are having question and answers coming in through Q&As. Most of our panelists have answered their respective questions, but please feel free to respond to the one that you think applies to you. There are some important comments coming in as well that are being duly noted from the audience. We had some polls on the perceptions about these public-private dialogue that was conducted, and also the issues related to the renewable energy potential along the coastal lines of Karachi. Just to discussion. We had some really important takeaways that I would like to highlight here. So the first one is adding the renewable energy projects based on lesser irradiance or the wind speed are some of the factors that make the projects more expensive. So these are the challenges that are difficult to handle by the national grid. However, if these projects are incorporated with other sustainability perspectives, such as water management, they can be substantially managed. Then also we are looking, there were some important highlights in terms of planning for future by considering the technological growth and not just the technologies that are currently present. So we need to look at the emerging technologies, like one of the panelists mentioned about the upcoming role of hydrogen. Also, some of the capacity issues, lack of institutional coordination were highlighted. So in Pakistan needs to move away from this political economy approach driven by some of the multi stakeholder involvement. We need to have focused. We need to look at the evacuation of the power by building more infrastructure, using more sustainable, more looking into more green investments, green financial instruments like green bonds, like other green policy tools that we could also learn from let's suppose China itself in materializing it in or bringing this in our CPEC. So given this whole current growth of electricity demand in Pakistan and looking into the shift to renewable energy power and the massive expansion of clean energy and power generation that is needed to be done, the dire need is the infrastructure and the grid and the planning that is need to be ramped up very critically. The investment needs, of course, they are hefty and remains critical to ensure that the infrastructure rollout speed is needs to be met with the needs of the energy transition, which will require, of course, further streamlining of planning processes, approval processes, and the other challenges that were highlighted. So these are some of the key summarized points that I could highlight before I come to the conclusion. So thank you so much to all my honorable panelists today for such a great, insightful, in-depth discussion. And it was very encouraging and very heartening to see perspectives coming from all sides. So this is actually the purpose of the dialogue, and we were fortunate to have right set of experts that were giving their opinions that are highlighted through this webinar, through this dialogue. And also this dialogue is not just the end of this commitment that we have engaged you with. We are hoping and we have actually planned to continue this engagement with all of you through the formulation of networks on clean energy transition in Pakistan. That is actually, we feel the need for today is actually the major deliverable of our ambition towards clean energy transition in Pakistan. So the details would be presented by our Executive Director, Dr. Abid Suleiri's message, a video message that will be just played right after my remarks. But just from my side, really grateful and thank you for your time and for your wonderful insights to the discussion. And like I said, the video is available. You're always welcome to revisit We are reachable at our email addresses. We are reachable at any time and remain available for any further discussion and queries related to this project, and also the outcomes of this dialogue that we have just conducted successfully. Thank you so much. I would request my IT team to kindly play the video message from Dr. Abid Suleiri. We have exceeded 5 minutes from today, but thank you so much for your patience. Thanks to audience. Bye.
Transition to clean energy requires collective efforts of government, of academia, of think tanks, and of individual citizens. And in order to promote this collectivity and in order to promote this collaboration, Sustainable Development Policy Institute has initiated a network called Clean Energy Transition Network. If you are interested in promoting clean energy, if you are interested in supporting this transition towards clean energy, then please join us. We have 3 subgroups. The first group is Renewable Energy Working Group. The second subgroup is Corporate Sustainability Group. And the third subgroup is Natural Capital Impact Network. I look forward to seek your support, and I look forward to work in collaboration with you.
Thank you. Allah Hafiz.